20 till 10 now. Thank you for staying with us here on Live. And more and more longtime married couples are calling it quits.
And while divorce rates overall have dropped in the U.S., for the over 50 crowd, the number of marriages ending in divorce has doubled in the past 20 years.
Wow, that's pretty extreme. Justin Thomas sees the trend in his family law practice. Justin, I'm just going to guess that maybe 20 years ago, folks over 50 may have wanted to take this step. Maybe they'd grown apart, but what kept them together perhaps then?
Well, I think it's a trend that's common with a lot of other things. You know, now you have women earning more money. Perhaps people felt more trapped back then, or didn't have the ability.
Choices, yeah.
Right, didn't have the ability or other options to get out of their marriages, whereas nowadays they do. There's also not as much stigma attached to divorce nowadays as there was, you know, maybe 30, 40 years ago.
So with all that in mind, Justin, are we seeing more women over 50 say, hey, I want out of this?
Are they
more
the ones?
so? Yeah, more so than men, their husbands?
Well, I don't think the statistics pinpoint it definitely to women, but there's certainly, like you talked about, in 1990, about 10% of spouses over 50 were divorcing. Now that number's up to like 25%. But I think one of the factors certainly is that women are earning more wages. They feel more independent, whereas they may have felt trapped as a stay-at-home mom maybe 40, 50 years ago.
So how do you keep it amicable? Because I assume even if your children are 21, 22, even older, this could cause some problems for them, even though they're not as dependent upon the parents. So how do you keep it friendly?
Well, keeping it amicable is dependent upon every situation, everybody's personality. But typically people who are older have more assets, and perhaps it's easier to divide more of those assets and everybody feels like they get, you know, a fair split of what's going on. It can be harder on the older children though. Just because you think a child is 20 or 21, well, perhaps they know somebody's had an affair or they understand the situation a lot better than maybe a 5 or 6 year old
So they
would.
feel betrayed too?
Right. And then you run into the common example of, well, we've been doing Thanksgiving and Christmas and all these things like this all our life. Well, now whose house do we go to, mom's or dad's, at Christmas time and Thanksgiving, whereas if a child is 5 years old, they're more used to that situation.
So with all these different things going on, Justin, so do you bring a mediator in to kind of help solve things or resolve it, or what do you recommend there?
Well, mediation is required in Tennessee in all divorces, and probably 85% of all divorce cases are resolved in mediation. And that process gives you the ability to have some control over what's going on as opposed to a judge whom you've never met. So yes, mediation is a process that's very common, very helpful, particularly when children aren't involved and you're just dealing with financial issues. You can typically get the divorce resolved at mediation.
What about too, because there are more assets, do you typically advise some forensic accounting and that sort of thing to make sure nobody's hiding anything? Not that I'm
Would somebody hide something, Mary Beth?
I'm just saying, if you have more, maybe you might. I mean, I assume you see more of that.
I'm not sure if we should be concerned about Mary Beth having a forensic accountant, but that is true. That, you know, particularly people that are older, maybe they've been unhappy for quite some time, so maybe husband or wife has a secret account, or they've been siphoning off portions of their bonuses into another account, things like that. So a forensic accountant can be very helpful in finding money. And then you also run into issues of the division of retirement accounts aren't as easy as just signing over a piece of paper. You have to do it with certain orders, so there's no tax consequences. So there's a lot of complications that go along with these things as well.
One last thing, Justin, some of these folks over 50, do they stop searching for love? I mean, do they sometimes remarry? What are you hearing out there? What do you see?
I don't think they stop searching. With the accessibility to Facebook, Match.com, all these, you know, websites. I don't think they ever stop searching. I think it's always, the grass is always greener type deal. You'd be surprised probably by the number of people who are remarried after the age of 50.
Yeah, I think there's one of those Match websites just for older folks. All right. The silver people.
There's information about the Thomas Family Law Firm right there on your screen, as well as the address and phone number.
All right, interesting. Get your kids involved in a good way. That's interesting.
And you're hiding the money where?
Yeah, right. Like I have any money. You remember what I do for a living?
Up next, right here on Live and Live.